Hi, this is Douglas Horn, founder of the Ease Protocol. At Ease, we're building the tools to make blockchain adoption easy for everyone and unlocking the future where businesses and governments can trust and use Web3 technology without the friction. You're tuned into the Edge of Show that's making blockchain innovation a little easier for the real world. Stick around.
Hey, Web3 pioneers, get ready for today's episode where we break down why stablecoins could be the next monetary revolution and what that means for global economies.
Then we're going to explore why ease of use has been crypto's Achilles heel and how Ease Protocol is finally solving it with enterprise-ready solutions.
And from ERP and government integrations to real-world asset platforms, we'll uncover why Ease is the most practical blockchain you've never heard of until now.
All this and more at the edge of blockchain made easy. Cue the intro.
Welcome to the Edge of Show, your gateway to the Web3 revolution. We explore the cutting edge of blockchain, cryptocurrency, NFTs, ordinals, DeFi, gaming, and entertainment, plus how AI is reshaping our digital future. Join us as we bring you visionaries and disruptors pushing boundaries in this digital renaissance. This show is for the dreamers, disruptors, and doers that are pumped about where innovation meets culture. This is where the future begins.
Welcome to the Edge of Show. I'm your host, Richard Carthon, here with my co-host, Josh Krieger, and we feature a variety of top-notch guests. It's another production of the Edge of Company, a quickly growing media ecosystem empowering the pioneers of Web3 tech and culture, and is responsible for other groundbreaking endeavors like the Outer Edge Innovation Festival in LA and Riyadh.
Today's show, brought to you by Ease Protocol, features Douglas Horn, who's the CEO of GoodBlock and founder of Ease Protocol. He previously founded the Telos blockchain and helped develop innovations like Telos EVM, Decide Governance Engine, and cross-chain bridging technologies. He is now focused on making blockchain accessible and compliant for businesses and governments. Ease Protocol is a blockchain platform built to meet regulatory standards, enable ISO 20022 financial messaging, and make blockchain easier to adopt for real-world use cases. Douglas, it's great to have you back on the show.
Hey, great to be here, guys. Thank you.
Where are you in the world today, by the way?
I am home in my home in the mountains near Seattle.
Beautiful.
Best places in the world.
I'm back in the U.S. today in Boston. Had to celebrate my mom's birthday, and it's the usual, right? The real present is just me being home, hanging out, spending good quality time together. So it's been really nice and good time of year to be here in Boston. The weather's beautiful. And I think it's a really interesting time we're at actually in the industry. It's been a reflective summer, if I might say so, in terms of some of the regulatory changes are kind of settling in. And we've seen this like really interesting evolution of the conversations around stablecoins and AI. And you're a futurist. I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of what's happening here in terms of stablecoins and AI and in the overall blockchain evolution.
Well, they're two different technologies that are taking two very different paths, I think. AI, it's interesting how AI has managed to capture users like within a year. It's something that everyone I know uses, right? And 16 years in, crypto still hasn't done that. There's a lot of friction still, which is what we're trying to address. But the AI, when I look at it, I see the possibility of what these other things could be, of the fast adoption that could occur, right? When I think about stable coins, I have long felt that they were the next evolution of money. I don't feel I'm alone in that. I think a lot of us see that. But what that means to me is I think we're at the cusp of people completely redefining how they understand payments and settlements, even on the global, macro level, right? Like how funds will be delivered, aid funds from the IMF and other things will be delivered. They're currently these funky credit things. It's just going to be stable coins. It's going to be and settlement. The way that people buy, super tankers full of oil is going to be stable coins, right? And so I feel like we're not only is there a huge consumer, merchant, and corporate opportunity, but there's actually the nearly to the level of like approaching economic warfare will emerge soon about stablecoin dominance, right? I mean, we've had US dollar dominance across the world for a long time. And the fact that the most powerful and used stablecoins right now are denominated in US dollars means that's likely to stick around. But, you know, there's several financial institutions just like kind of scolded the UK for not having a stablecoin policy, and their point was stablecoins are how things are going to be used, and if you don't have one, the states, the nations that don't have them are actually going to fall behind, and I think that's true. And so to me, it's a huge, just like something about to explode on the scene. That's what I think.
So China sort of started the digital sort of yen program in a fairly pioneering way. How is stablecoins similar or different in your mind in terms of just digitalization of currency? Like do you see stablecoins as more than what China did, for example, with the yen?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the biggest thing is probably the universality of these stable coins. Like I'm talking with countries and whatnot about potentially them using our technology for their national stable coins with a few. And one of the things that I feel like they're all surprised about when I tell them, no, when the stable coin changes hands, it has settled instantly, and there is no forex risk because you could instantly, in the next half second, where forex transactions done in the middle of the day, and by the end of the day, the rates are all out of whack, and there's a problem, right? The instant finality of stable coins on platforms like Ease that offer that is going to completely change how we think about settlement. Like no more end of day or even intraday. It's just instant. That's one example of many about how this is different than anything we had before. Whereas with the Chinese, renminbi, digital renminbi, you didn't have people in other countries who would take that, right? It was useful in China, but it's not like if I'm doing, business in, I'll pick a fictional country like Wakanda or Liberland or something. I don't have to only use that within Wakanda. I can, if it's a established currency, I can sell that anywhere in the world instantaneously, right? That's different than anything we've ever had before.
Definitely. And, one of the parallels that I wanted to draw around adoption, because we got on the subject of stable coins, and when I kind of want to bring it back to the conversation around adoption. So one of the reasons why stable coins is really starting to take off is because of regulations that's happened in the States, right? So we had the Genius Act pass, the Clarity Act is trying to get passed. And because of these kind of regulations, now people now that things are a little bit more clear, are storming to make things happen faster. So when I think about the parallels of like crypto adoption versus AI adoption, like how's it that like AI adoption has just taken off so much further? Like so many more people in a lot of ways are utilizing AI in their daily life more so than they're using crypto. How do you think like that? How do you make that distinction of why it took off so much faster?
So something you were saying about stable coins taking off because of the Genius Act and whatnot. I actually think it's the opposite. I think that the Genius Act and these other things are happening because it's very clear that stablecoins offer a really big financial opportunity, and that people within, the U.S. government's current administration are very keen to see that as a way to preserve U.S. dollar hegemony in the global economic scene, right? So they push that through because, much faster than almost any other kind of bill could go through, because they see the possibility, the use for them, the need. As to why AI is taken off so much more quickly, it's interesting, related in an interesting way. So AI took off very quickly because it didn't really have very many interface problems. The designers had a mindset towards solving interface problems from the beginning, which crypto never had. And they gave people real useful things that they could be doing right away, right? I can go, find out whatever I want to find out in like a super search or even better way, or get my document that I need written, rough drafted or whatever. Those are really useful things. Whereas crypto didn't really give many people very many useful actual things to do. It's still primarily for speculation, right? And people buy it, and they buy it in all kinds of ways, but they don't actually run smart contracts. Very minuscule amount of people are actually doing that. So what stablecoins will do, and what they will change, is there will now be something really useful that you can do with crypto, which is make payments that are faster, have no national boundaries in many cases, settle instantly, and are more attractive to merchants, right? Because the fee can be like, less than 1% as opposed to 2 to 3%. I mean, that's a big hit for most merchants, and it's something that they are going to adopt quickly if they can get out of the credit card payment rails system, which, even though we have like Stripe and all these other things, they're all still really on the credit card system, meaning they're paying credit card rates, and we can cut those by 80%, maybe more, right? That's going to be a big change. That's going to give people something to do. But of course it requires that we have the ease of use for Web 2 type users, so they don't have to worry about their keys and losing them or being phished, or having a difficult sign-in process every time. Just like make a Venmo for crypto, basically, which is what we're trying to do.
Totally relate to what you're saying in terms of the big UX problem that crypto has had historically. And I think it's been like over a decade of this sort of conversation around the problems with crypto and UX. It's unfortunate.
16 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and meanwhile, iPhones are a work of art at this point, right? So I guess the question becomes, what specific solutions is Ease building to solve this problem?
Yeah, so perfect question to answer. So the first thing we need to do is solve the end user ease of use problem, because everyone's an end user, right? In the end. And so even if we were trying to just focus on corporate or government or whatever, we'd still need to solve that problem. The way we're solving that is we are eliminating the need to manage your keys without reducing security. We are meaning that you could download your seed phrase anytime you want, but we recommend you don't. But you can do it if you're that kind of person. But most people won't need to. They'll have access to it. We don't have access to it, by the way. We, meaning whoever's operating, whatever operators are operating the networks, don't have it, right? We also, meaning the people creating the technology at Ease protocol, we don't have that. Even as developers, we don't have that, right? Nobody else has that. It's secured by a biometric passkey by the end user, which means that they just do the same action that they're used to doing in any other payment app, where they set up their payment, and then they use their thumbprint or finger or face or whatever they're going to do, however their passkey set up to allow it to verify it, and then it goes out, right? As opposed to things like firing up MetaMask and deciding how much gas to use, and making sure you're on the right nonce and the right account and the right chain and everything. People find that very frustrating, and it's a stopper. I've actually done quite a bit of product testing with people, trying to get them to use the various crypto wallets.
Yeah, so I can only imagine the blooper reels from going through those experiments.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good exercise though, because you can see not just that there's a problem, but you can see where the sticking points are. And, I used to produce and invent games for, big companies like Pokemon and Microsoft and places like that. And in those processes, we always used customer feedback constantly throughout the process. And it just applying those learnings from earlier in my career to what we're doing now, it just underscores to me that no one's ever done this with any crypto interface. I feel, it's like they're terrible, and the sticking points, there's so many of them. So you can identify the sticking points in a problem or in a process, and then address them, and that's what we do. It's a very rigorous, kind of boring way to do things. You figure out where the problems are, where people are getting stuck, and you fix that, and then you figure out the next place they're getting stuck, and you fix that. And it's just a approach towards design that every other industry in the world, including AI, to the previous question, seems to be using very well. And we've just thrown up our hands and said, no, we don't need to do that. We're crypto. We're good.
I want to stay on that point for a moment. So, like, when we think about the challenge of the user interface and ease of use, when Web3 started to focus on that, in a lot of ways, it was on the B2C, the end consumer type, and there wasn't as much emphasis around corporations and like also making it easy for them as well. I know that's a really big sticking point for ease protocol. So, can you kind of speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the way that corporations use computers is they use big names that we're all familiar with, like Salesforce, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP. Um, they use like these big technologies. They're generally referred to as enterprise resource planning software or enterprise resource platforms, ERP systems. And these companies, every major company almost has invested tens to hundreds of millions of dollars in building out a computer system for all their necessary business processes, right? Based on these platforms. They are not going to change that. They are not going to throw that out the window to use crypto, and they're not going to use some kind of bolted on, they may in pilot programs and whatnot, but long term, they're not going to use any kind of, you know, afterthought, aftermarket, bolted on crypto wallets, right? Because if you think about what a company has to do, a corporation, an enterprise has to do, they have to not only be able to pay and receive, but then they have to track those. They have to assign signing authority to different people and be able to rescind that if those people aren't at the company anymore. There's a lot of functionality, and then they have to keep that in their accounting, right? Those stable coins are pretty easy, but imagine you brought in other cryptos, which we're doing. Like, how do you manage the accounting of some Bitcoin on a corporate account? I mean, there are a few that are doing it, but I think what they do is they just treat it like a traditional banking asset and use a custody service. Even MicroStrategy or Strategy uses a custody service of Coinbase, right? They're not doing anything in house. So that is one way you can do it. The way people do it right now is they just have an outside provider, but that is not really the way companies usually go. They usually want to, bring in, as this becomes a bigger and more lucrative part of their business, they're not going to want to give up the extra percentage or two that they have when somebody else is managing their custody, right? They're going to want to bring it internally. Those are the exact types of tools that we are making, and we're making them to fit within the Oracle and SAP and Salesforce, QuickBooks, those ecosystems, by becoming partners in their partner networks, and then having our tools, submitting our tools to them for evaluation and to actually sell in their sales channels, which is how enterprise businesses buy new software. What they're going to have to do is they're going to say, well, we use Oracle, so we're going to go through the Oracle partner network. We're going to look up blockchain, stable coins, things like that, and see what's in there in the network. And if they were to do that today, there would be nothing. But if they were to do that in a month or two, there would be ease protocol, ease ERP. And that's what's new. And if you logically understand how companies have to adopt software, which is the process I just described, you understand that this should have happened a long time ago, But until it does, is a sticking point in adoption.
Absolutely. And I think the other interesting customer segment that you're targeting is government.
Mhm.
I was very impressed when we went over to Riyadh in terms of some of the ways that the Saudi Arabia government's looking at utilizing blockchain, and big organizations like Aramco are starting to use blockchain already in telco companies. But this is not sort of a universality across the global landscape. Certainly, the use cases that have come to life in the U.S. have been fairly limited so far. We covered when the California DMV put their titles on the blockchain with Avalanche, which was super cool. And that was a use case that I've been waiting for a long time. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I guess the question I have for you, Douglas, is why do you think vast majority of companies, the government is being overlooked as a true customer?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think even though the reality is that government is actually one of the world's 2 or 3 biggest industries, maybe after agriculture and things like that, we don't really think of it as an industry, right? Even though it produces massive amounts of revenue, it, spends massive amounts of money. Um, Generally, we think government is government, not industry. So I think it gets overlooked for that point, but I think it also just gets overlooked because another thing curious to our crypto industry is that we've always had a.
Hey listeners, are you ready to amplify your voice in a digital world? Introducing .podcast domains, your gateway to the future of online identity. Whether you're a creator, a company, or just someone with big ideas, .podcast is for you. Own your unique digital identity, connect securely, and explore hundreds of apps with no renewal fees. Don't wait for someone else to claim your name. Secure your .podcast domain today and be part of the next generation of content creation. Visit get.unstoppabledomains.com/podcast to get started. Again, that's get.unstoppabledomains.com/podcast. Your voice, your rules, your identity.
Rough relationship with governments. Bitcoin was invented because governments had completely messed up their economics. On the other hand, you've also got governments that have, policies that probably didn't make a lot of sense, that were very anti-crypto. So because of this, the crypto industry and governments tend to be in completely different corners, even though governments would likely be some of the biggest potential customers for crypto, for blockchain based systems, right? And in the end, we talk about crypto, we talk about all these things, but the blockchain based systems, stablecoin payments being one of them, those are what's really going to have to come in and revolutionize things, right? The promise of crypto or blockchain is at least partially that it gives more efficient ways to do certain things, like record those licenses, right? Those things need better ways to be recorded. Governments are far behind and not very unified in their approaches, and so there's an opportunity for blockchain to solve this. But to do that, we have to engage governments as if they are our largest potential customer, right? And that's another thing that just hasn't happened yet.
Agreed. And the emphasis around government and putting a lot of these things in place is an important aspect of this is being compliant. Make sure that your infrastructure that you're putting is safe, secure, and compliant with whatever the regulations are around it. And I know that ease focuses a lot around this specific thing. And one of the challenges that potential competitors has is not putting much emphasis around from the beginning the compliance around making sure that everything is good. So how is ease focusing on that component as you also approach governments?
Right. So compliance is something that changes depending on what jurisdiction you're operating in, right? And what we try to do on the technical side first is be, compliant with non-governmental industry-wide security standards like NIST, like SOAP 2 level 2, things like that. That is something that we take very seriously and being very compliant with those. Governments have a very small number of things that they need from crypto to be able to use them harmoniously, but they haven't been addressed, or at least not more than half measures. They need to be able, with the proper legal authority in their nation or state or whatever, just like they want to be able to look at bank accounts and things like that, governments are not going to be satisfied or accepting of crypto until they can do the same thing with crypto accounts. Now, the reality is almost every crypto is on a public block explorer, which means that with the right tools, they can do that with any account already, right? One of the problems there actually for consumers is you still don't want all your competitors and everybody to be able to see how you're spending all your money. So that has to be solved. We address that with our privacy protection measures, which are privacy against other users, but still maintain the ability for governments with the right authority to be able to look at those addresses or accounts, as opposed to what would happen if you use ZK proofs or something like that on every transaction, and then no one would be able to look at them. It's a totally valid way to go for some things, but I think if you want to make sure that governments are going to be accepting and especially willing and excited to use your technology, then you have to address that. You have to not use something like that. You have to use something that's more of a gated, filtered form of privacy protection. Governments need to be able to bypass that privacy with the proper authority. That's one thing. The other thing is that when suspicious activity is found or suspected or whatever, a government is going to want to do what they can do with banks, which is just issue an order, that should come with court approval, but by whatever process, governments, here's what they want to do. I'm not saying this is the best thing that could possibly happen, but this is what governments need to have happen if they're going to accept fully crypto and blockchain. They need to be able to go in the same way, if somebody is accused of something, they need to be able to seize an account, right? And you can actually, almost all major stable coins have this at least partial seizing, right? So what we see now is, and by the way, I'm well aware that this is a very sort of touchy subject for a lot of people in crypto, because one of the reasons we got into this was, so governments couldn't seize your accounts. And I'll say that what we're doing doesn't change, what Bitcoin and all those others can do. You can still have that security. Now, I think it's notable that the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve is made up entirely of funds that were already seized by the governments, and they weren't seized by breaking the Bitcoin protocol. They were seized by breaking the owner, right? And so I actually think that providing this thing that the government can always take if they want to by breaking you is preferable. Of course, more preferable the more protections people have in their own government. But, I think this is long-term a way towards that. Because as people get more financial power, they will demand more responsive governments. But if governments don't have the ability to go in and get rid of and say, we're taking over this account, like they do with like they do with Circle and Tether and whatnot, to at least freeze accounts, they're not going to engage. So we have built a process that allows that to happen. Now, it doesn't have to be enacted on any blockchain. It's optional when you set up the blockchain. The way we envision it is a government, say Wakanda comes in and has their own stable coin and has their own national blockchain system where they record things like vibranium ownership and rhinoceros pet licenses and and land titles, right? They have that. For them to use it, they're going to demand that first that they're running the servers in their own country, that the servers are run by probably their Treasury Department or similar, or by contractors directly contracted to their Treasury Department or similar. And so there's all these rules of jurisdiction. For those types of things, they will turn on the feature. And when they decide that they need to, freeze an account and then eventually, run it through a trial and eventually do something with that account, which includes possibly returning it to its original owner if they were never, there was never any rationale or reason to seize them. Until they have that, they're not going to be able to, they're just not going to accept that system. It'll just be a no, right?
Yeah.
They might do some pilots, but they'll never go, okay, yeah, this is a system where we're actually going to use for our digital money.
For sure. And I think another interesting side of this, which is becoming increasingly common, is the real world asset component of blockchain, right? There's not a better use case for real world assets than actually within government. And the government has started to take note of this in terms of using real world assets to increase transparency, reduce fraud, improve efficiency for public services.
Let's take a pause to shout out one of our favorite partners. For tech innovators facing legal challenges, Zubul Lawler is your go-to law firm. They focus on understanding your technology and business model before addressing legal requirements. Specializing in blockchain, AI, VR, AR, quantum computing, and more, Zubul Lawler offers expert guidance in capital raising, IP transactions, M&A, litigation, and compliance. Visit zuberlawler.com, that's ZUBERLAWLER.com, for cutting-edge legal solutions.
Did a little research in preparation for today and learned that the city of South Burlington, Vermont, collaborated on a project to test real-world assets being transferred on the blockchain and found that it saved money, and it saved time. So, I think as you're talking about all these different utilization points for ease protocol, I know you're also thinking about ease as the ultimate real world asset platform. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you have in mind there and how it might be applicable to government and enterprises that we've talked about so far on the show?
Yeah. So I think that when I see certainly land title RWA platforms right now, I always think of them and I say, well, that would be great if the governments weren't going to do the exact same thing within a decade. And that once they have done it, then any of the other real world asset platforms become fairly redundant, right? If the national government has a land title system that's in use and you can do buys and sells and fractionalization of property and all the cool stuff on that platform, why would you add a separate, layer of complexity? Now, maybe there's a reason, but I think that mostly all the things that we think we want to do with DeFi, be able to, do fractionalization and sales and lending and staking of your land and things like that. All of those are things that could be done, very efficiently on a platform like Ease. And so whether or not actually they're directly integrating with the government already, but especially when Liberland comes on and has all their land titles on chain, right? Then, that's going to be where people are going to want to transact. Because for one thing, if you transact on anything else, then you have to do a separate step and record it on the national system, right? Another huge efficiency, like think about if you're fortunate enough to be a homeowner and you have bought a house, you probably got, in the US, you probably got something called title insurance, which is basically a insurance policy that somebody comes along in the future and says, that's not your land, that's mine, that will pay out in that case. And every, US home sale, for example, which is certainly like a multi-trillion-dollar market. Every home sale, requires this, and you pay money for it. And what the title companies do is they just have these, big lists where they've scraped all the databases so they can, and basically when you're selling a house, you're asked to provide all the substantiation, right? Even though they're getting paid to have that, it's incumbent on you as the home seller to provide most of that. At any rate, they'll go through all that and say, yep, we feel safe for doing this, and thanks for our 0.5% of the cost of your house, right? So the land title system is really just insurance against really messed up record keeping. And I'll use an example of the Bahamas, where there just is no centralized database, right? And one of the challenges there is anytime you want to buy a piece of property, you have to hire a lawyer, do all this looking into everything, and people come out of the woodwork and say it's theirs or whatnot. And perhaps it is, perhaps it was. Like the claims of ownership are very unclear. And what that means as an impact is that people just won't invest in those areas, right? In Ghana, where we've been doing a regenerative farming project for a while, there's a problem that without being on the national register that can be checked, from anywhere in the world, investors just won't invest, right? Because they can't say, because I come to you and I say, hey, I want you to invest in my farm. And they go, oh, that sounds great. We'd love to. How do we know it's yours? And like, well, trust me, bro, or fly to Accra, the capital of Ghana, and go into and do a bunch of research. And it's like, they're like, no, we're really looking for something that we could like push a button on a computer and then move on with our lives. And and it's like, oh, that doesn't exist yet. So then what happens is international investment doesn't happen in places like Ghana and Bahamas, right? Or at a much, much, much reduced pace, because there's just so much friction, right? So one of the advantages is actually the ability to eliminate that friction and then unlock the economic growth in things like property in these countries, which, people should want.
100%. And I think that's a really good example. And the way that property is even done here in the States, or even just having to go through databases to find everything, is pretty old in a lot of ways that blockchain can solve. But then you have like that next component of where else can this go? Like, where else can we bring this outside of these other use cases outside of real estate, from potential medical to go to potential voting systems? So like there's so much that can be brought under this umbrella. And I know that Ease is focused on a lot of these different use cases. So
one of the things I built was the Decide governance engine and Decide voter app. And we're actually integrating that into Ease protocol because when I originally built them, I made them open source. So we are able to bring that in. The voting and governance platforms of many, many places in the world are really messed up, right? The last technological disruption of things like voting was the invention of paper, right? So once we had paper, ever since we've had paper, it's basically the process has been unchanged. You somehow let people make a mark on a piece of paper. Then you want to collect all those pieces of paper. Don't lose any. Don't provide an opportunity for any new ones to be added in, right? And then you count them. And then if there's a problem and people don't believe it, then you count them again. Like, that is the technology of voting when it comes down to it, in almost in the US and any place in the world, right? Practically. So if we can make that a blockchain-based trusted system that's very easy to do, where there's no chance that your vote is not counted, in fact, your vote is counted, right? Where you can where you can vote very easily without having to go somewhere or potentially be intimidated by the other party or the government itself or whatever, depending on where you are. But just do it on the convenience of your phone. That's great, right? If you can, instead of having multiple days, weeks, or sometimes even months before you know the final outcome of an election, if you can know that in 2 minutes, right? That would also be great. All these things will help restore faith in government. The things I just mentioned are all strong reasons why people are suspicious of voting. And I think we can solve that. I set out to solve that with Decide Governance Engine, and I'm really glad that we're going to be incorporating that as a post MVP feature of the system. So I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I think every government needs to adopt this. And also, the governance is different than just voting, right? There's committee management. There's all kinds of things that we build into that I think small towns or medium-sized towns or smart cities or whatever, bottom up, will want to adopt because it also lowers their costs and improves their service. So I think that's another thing that we'll see after people, it'll actually be empowered by people getting used to using stable coins, being more comfortable with it. And then, of course, by Ease protocol, including in the Easy for Everyone super app, the voting features that any organization can adopt for themselves, whether it's a union or a company or a county or whatever. That's how that adoption is likely to happen as a second wave after stablecoins.
Yeah. I think it has to all be layered in, and I think it's all about, a first injection point on meeting people where they are and where they feel like they can start to adopt the technology. So, we covered a lot today, a lot of different ways that Ease is tackling a lot of these challenges that are currently happening. But as you look at the next 6 to 12 months, what's on the roadmap? What are things that people are looking forward to? If someone's listening to this, you're like, yo, this sounds awesome. I potentially want to go build on here. Do you have grants? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the next month or two, we're going to see the release of the MVP that people can actually start using. We're also, during that time frame, tied to it, there's going to be a token generation event for the Ease Hub system, because that token actually plays a core function of providing liquidity through our revolutionary exponential liquidity system that allows things like atomic swaps to be built in to a transfer. So if I want to pay in USDC, but you want to receive USDT, I don't have to do a separate transaction for that to happen. So because we need that for those features, we're going to have a token generation event for the hub chain, Ease Hub. And that's something to see. I think we'll bring a lot of people in because there will be staking rewards, and there's augmented staking rewards early on. I think we'll see a lot of people from crypto world come in for those reasons. And I think we'll see a lot of people from elsewhere come in because as we bring out merchant tools for merchants to be able to not only use Ease Pay as a way to bypass the credit card rails and save money, but also we're going to give them tools in the Easy for Everyone super app to be like a small point of sale system for themselves, meaning that businesses can basically kind of set up a storefront, on Ease protocol. That's very easy for everyone to use. It's message based, and we think that's going to bring a lot of adoption. I happen to believe that, especially in the world, in the U.S., but especially in the broader world, there's a massive amount of micro entrepreneurs who are one-person operations. They're your side hustle, right? And a lot of people have 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those, and you need to sort of like create those as a business unto itself. And giving people a bunch of tools on Ease super app means that they have those things, so they can improve their business. They can instantly notarize something, right? It's not a big deal. It's not cutting edge, but no one's really made it easy for people to do it before. You can get a microloan to go out and do something, right? You can find your customers. You can do payments and revenue splitting and all these kinds of things. You can do a no code smart contract based system for loyalty points for your customers, right? That's part of our Autotasks no code smart contract platform that's going to be coming out in about 4 months. And so these tools are going to really bring a lot of adoption to the Ease protocol platform. Then I think within 6 months, big things that we're doing with major countries and major financial institutions already. And I think within 6 months, you'll see the first of those projects actually coming out as pilots in those areas. A year from now, we will have multiple, releases of Ease Send and Ease ERP, Ease GDP, much usage of exponential liquidity staking as a staking system. And I think it'll become apparent that, this is a technology that's actually making revenue, that's actually people are using, are liking, are having fun with, are engaged about in the same way that people are engaged about, Venmo or something, right? And it just becomes part of their life. As that happens, I think it'll be really clear that we're, on a rocket ship path to success. That's where I think Ease is going to be.
Well, it's quite a journey that you guys are on, and it's really nice to have such a clear, specific roadmap as an answer to that question. We ask that question a lot, right? We've had over 400, maybe 450 shows, and you don't always get that level of specificity when you ask about the roadmap, and that's a problem with our industry, but it certainly sort of alludes to sort of the gravitas of what you're building and why we're so excited to have you as a partner, Douglas. And
I'd be happy to have you guys. It's always fun because you guys know a little bit more about what we're doing than we can publicly talk about. So it's like, this is so cool, right? And can't wait to tell people about it. It's been great. I'm really excited about your Washington DC event and our ability to be sponsors there. And I think that's something I didn't include in my roadmap, which maybe I should have, which is inroads with the U.S. government as well through outreach like that and some other things that we're doing.
Yeah, I think the benefits of that event are quite obvious. The opportunity to sort of engage directly with not only lawmakers, policymakers in the U.S. but globally who will be at the event. Mm-hmm. So my sort of closing question to you though is actually you have this unique platform. We're honored to give it to you. What do you hope will be the greatest takeaways from your panel in the event for policymakers globally?
I would call success reaching one or two policymakers of note and really getting them to understand my vision of where stablecoins are going and what the possibilities are and what the need for treating this like it's almost a tool of economic, warfare or self-defense, and not just a cool way for people to pay for stuff. I think if people can understand my vision, if I can share that with policymakers, and they can understand what I see as the possibility, what I see as the risks, and the opportunities, then I will be very happy. Now, it'd be great to do that for 100 people, but one or two of the right people could be incredibly valuable as well. And of course, everything is the start of a conversation, right? It's not where I'm not looking to change the world at one event. It's a great stop on the the train ride, between which requires many stations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey, but that's why Richard and I are so excited about the event, the Future of Money Summit with folks like Gels and Animoca Brands and Constellation Networks, all real like forward thinkers around sort of how the government can engage with this technology to make the world better, which is why I got into the space personally. And we're also going to have some fun. There's going to be this gala at St. Gregory's Hotel the night before, and we're going to play a game called Cryptoptily. So as a game maker, I'm sure you'll enjoy that as well. And we're doing that with EasyBot, which is a really cool sort of company as well that you'll learn more about. So great to have you there. Great to have you back on the show. Really excited to know, what the fall and beyond is going to bring for Ease Protocol.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be at the event and actually have Ease Protocol as an app that people can download. And in fact, we might even find ways to give people some tokens or some, NFTs or some prizes just for creating an account, which takes less than a minute, right? And, just show the ease of use. So I'm really hopeful that there will be opportunities to do that as part of the conference. That I do see as a really big opportunity for us to grow and change minds.
Absolutely. Where can folks go to learn more about Ease Protocol and start to sort of unpack the potential?
Yeah, ease.tech, ease.tech. Ease.tech is a great website to go to. We've got, it seems like every couple of days we add more content. We're getting documentation, all kinds of things there. So ease.tech is a great place to go. On Twitter and Telegram, we are at Ease Protocol, all one word. And so it's really easy to follow us there and get the latest or discuss with other people who are excited about it, what's going on. And you can follow me personally at Douglas_Horn, no E at the end. And you can follow me personally at Douglas_Horn. And I talk about things a little outside purely the company part and more the long-term vision. And the Ease Protocol at Ease Protocol platforms are a great way to see what's going on officially, our official releases, things, people who write about us. So those are great places to follow up. And I'm excited I always love talking to people about these things. It's a big time. And I think that the important thing is that we all kind of come to this together and understand and build this future together, right? I don't think I'm building the future. I think I'm just building tools for other people to build the future with.
Well, sounds good. And thanks again for joining us today, Douglas.
Thank you so much. It's great. I can't wait for the event, and can't wait for this video to come out. It's looking great. You guys always do such a great job.
Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.
We've reached the outer limit at the Edge of Show for today. Thanks for exploring with us. We have room for more adventurers on our starship, so invite your friends and cool strangers to join our journey. If you're among the hundreds of thousands following us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, or watching us on Myco or YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, rate us, and make an awesome comment too. And don't forget to pass this episode along to a friend or two who would benefit from it. Doubling back to again, recommend checking out myco.io, where you can watch The Edge of Show and earn for your time and attention. That's myco.io. Don't forget to visit theedgeofshow.com. The is part of the domain name, where you can learn more about collaborating with us and also subscribe to the Edge of Weekly newsletter for the latest Web3 news, events, and show drops. In addition, connect with us on all major social platforms by searching for The Edge of Show. Join the exciting conversations happening online. Lastly, be sure to tune in next time for more great Web3 and AI content. Until then, keep pushing the boundaries. Thanks again for hanging out with us today. The views and opinions expressed on The Edge of Show reflect solely those views and opinions of the show host and its guests. Please make sure to do your own research. Our show is not financial advice. You understand that you are using any and all information on or through this podcast at your own risk. Whenever making financial decisions, we recommend doing your own research and talking to your accountant for financial advice. From time to time, we may feature sponsored content on the show for which we receive value, and we may share links for which we receive a commission if you make a purchase through one of these links. Refer to our website, www.edgeofnft.com, for our full disclaimer, terms and conditions, and privacy policy.